This evening, I'm joined once again by a friend of the show. I had to dust off this drip just for this episode. It is July, Washington, D.C., 100% humidity, 100 degrees outside, but that's all right. I'm the man in black today for my next guest. He's one of my favorite lightweight prospects slash featherweight prospects, whatever you want to call him in the country. We're doing it. Landry, the Lone Star Kid, Ward, Mr. Ward. Always love interviewing you. Always love getting the chance to talk with you, man. It's been a few months since we've done one of these.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's good to be back.
Well, it's good to have you back, man. And there are a few things that I kind of wanted to hit on with you, Landry. There are like two things I think about. Like in the introduction, I said like featherweight slash lightweight. And here we are. We're 8 fights into this. Do you have an idea when you think about yourself competing on the next level? Do you have a rough idea in terms of like which weight class you see yourself competing at in the highest levels?
Yeah, I think I'll be at featherweight for a foreseeable future, probably next like 3 or 4 years. So I have the body type to fight at 55, but I can make 45. I make it fairly easy, and I'll grow into that 55. So for the foreseeable future, I'll be at 45. My last fight was 55 because it was kind of short notice, and they sent me a 55er, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. So this next one here, July 21st, I'll be back down at featherweight.
Okay, so we're going back down to featherweight, and that was just one of the things I was going to ask you. When I think of you, it's really strange because, like, not only we had that fight at lightweight, but you're a really young guy still, and you've racked up a ton of fights to the point where like every year I sit down and I think about like, okay, like who are the prospects that I would name like a prospect of the year? And I would never like put you in that category. You'll never win that from me because I don't consider you a prospect. Like when you start hitting like close to like those double digits, when you start talking about 8 fights in the game, like to me, you're no longer a prospect at that point. Like you're somebody who's a veteran of this game, somebody who's made this walk multiple times, and to call you a prospect, I don't think that's very respectful based off of all the things that you've accomplished thus far. I was hoping you could tell me a little bit about like how has your game evolved just like over the past like year or so, because I'm seeing different things from you. I thought I had seen it all, and then like this last fight that you just put on for us, you were doing stuff I'd never seen you do before.
Yeah, man, been evolving a lot. Being at Killcliff around high level trainers, high level training partners. There's no choice but to keep evolving. And yeah, I'm still young. Have a decent amount of fights. I would definitely consider myself a prospect still, a semi-veteran, I guess you could say. Um, yeah, I've got a good experience, and I've learned a lot from the bit of experience that I have, and just the training environment, training partners, coaches that I have, and everything's coming together. Just in the past few months, I can noticeably tell like the evolution that I've hit specifically in that time. And damn, I'm ready to go show it. Been what, like 9 months since my last fight, so I promise you're gonna see even more stuff that you're like, where did this come from? Come in July.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am talking to Killcliff FC's Landry Ward. He's got a big fight coming up. It's at LFA 163. That's on July 1st. And Landry, I wanted to pick your brain a little bit. I think of you, I think of like Combate Global right away. You fight out your contract, and then you become like a free agent. And there are a few reasons in the back of my head. I'll kind of keep them between us, but being around this game long enough, I have a pretty good understanding of what led you down this path and why you're taking this LFA fight. Like to me, it makes total sense. But I wanted you to just kind of tell me a little bit like LFA, they're one of the premier regional organizations in MMA, but you're fighting like in Texas, and that's like a big deal for you. And I'm hoping you could explain to me a little bit like when did they approach you? When did a deal with LFA come together for this bout agreement?
Yeah, so just ended my contract with Combate, and it was just a point where Combate is a great promotion. I love working with them. Everyone was good there. It was just they want to be their own promotion. They want to be competing with the Bellators, the UFCs and stuff. And when you look at it, just if you want to be the upper echelon, that guy, the UFC is usually where you go. And that's my goal. That's been my goal. And LFA, obviously the biggest UFC feeder promotion you can get. Wasn't anything specific like reaching out, trying to get with them. It was just sitting down with my management, seeing what the next step was, and knowing that, I'm there. I know I'm at the level to get to the UFC, compete in the UFC, and, rack up wins. Now I just got to take the right step to get there. And LFA was that step.
I don't know if we're allowed to talk about this, but there are a couple things that I've been thinking about with you over the past like few months. Ultimate Fighter, as soon as I found out Michael Chandler was one of the coaches, I was like, okay, this is a no-brainer. I'm expecting to see Landry on this. Potentially, like when they were like starting to roll out these contender fights, I'm like, okay, like I would expect to see that too. And I kind of wanted to ask you, like, and maybe it's an awkward question to ask, but like when you were thinking about like Contender, when you're thinking about the Ultimate Fighter, were like one of those in your brain for 2023, like as a possibility? And are you a little surprised one of those didn't work out?
When the Ultimate Fighter came out, that it was lightweights were going to be a part of it. In my head, I was like, maybe that'll be something that comes to fruition. I actually did get in contact with a producer, but by the time I got in contact with them, they had already had all the contestants in line. And I joked around with Mike. I was like, Connor took his guys. Where am I at?
Right.
That's not the kind of guy he is. He's not two different personality types you get with
Totally get it.
as you can see in the show. Uh, but I wasn't putting too much into it. If it came, it came. I think my name was probably in the hat for a contender. Feel like maybe they just want to see one more out of me, and one more on, LFA. What better exposure can I get? So I'm excited to go capitalize. I'm gonna go get a win here. Beautiful win, flashy knockout. Gonna be fun. Gonna put on a performance, man. I get to go back home. Fighting back in Combate, there was no fans or very little fans when they were, and it's just a different environment. It didn't have that same energy. Feel like they might have took a little pop away. So now that I get to go home, packed crowd, LSK chants, I get goosebumps thinking about it. I've been visualizing it. Been waiting to go back home. Been waiting to be in front of fans. So I'm gonna go do something crazy, do something fun, and my name will be in the hat for sure after this one.
Tell us a little bit about your matchup. Who's the person that is going to be sharing the cage with you, and what do you know about him?
So I'm gonna be fighting a Brazilian dude. Might pronounce his name wrong, Matias Pereira.
Mm-hmm.
He's 11-5. Most of his wins are by submission. He's been knocked out a few times in his losses. Yeah, looks like a strong dude, good grappler. Great matchup, quote unquote striker versus grappler. But again, this is the evolution you're gonna be able to see. I'm telling you, this is gonna be a tailor-made performance for me to go show, the well-rounded fighter that I am and that I've become and am becoming. So I'm excited, man. I can't wait.
What an opportunity, to fight for the past couple of years on a television show. Basically, that's basically what it is. There's not really a live audience. It's the production crew, coaches, the fighters, and like that's basically it. And now you go from that type of environment to a crowd, and you haven't really fought in front of a crowd since your XKO days. And that was one of the first things that you talked about. Like, does the crowd matter to you? Like, I know you're a guy that doesn't need it per se because you've proven that already, but like, what does the Lone Star Kid look like when you're fighting in front of like a crowd versus like a sterile environment like the Apex?
I mean, I definitely feed off the energy. I love it. My last fight with fans, yeah, I'm pretty sure I main evented for XKO. And I was at Billy Bob's. That was the first ever fight they've done at Billy Bob's. If you don't know Billy Bob's, it's like world's largest honky tonk, country bar back in Texas. So packed crowd, everybody chanting, screaming, yelling for me, and that just that gets me going, man. I love to perform, and when the lights shine bright and some would say the pressure's on, like I feel like I rise to the occasion. I want to be there. I don't like get nervous about, oh man, there's a lot of people out here. It's like bring the eye, like I love it, you know. So fighting in front of that sterile environment was a little weird. Definitely had to go to a different place in my head where I'm not feeding off energy so much, where it's more of like a mental thing, like let's just go do what we do and not try to, I guess, be entertaining, as you could say. But yeah, man, that energy, it's just, it gets me going.
Well, watching your last fight, I was thinking to myself, like, oh man, that's just a real shame that that wasn't in front of like a live audience. That was probably my favorite fight of yours that I've ever seen. You throwed new wrinkles in your game. You proved that you're one of the best feather slash lightweights on the regional MMA scene in the country. Like when I think of like that short list, like if you had to name like 5 45ers or 5 lightweights that aren't signed to a major promotion, like that should be who would be on your list, and you've been on mine for a couple of years. And that knee really was something else. I really liked how you set that up. I still feel like there are so many different things about your game though that you aren't showing, that you maybe not have had an opportunity to show. I bet there's tons of things that you work on to get ready for these fights, and like those of us at home, we're only seeing a very small sample size of what you can actually do.
100%. Yeah. I was actually just talking about that with my friend, Impa Kasangana. You know, he was just saying you don't got to show everything right now. You can beat these guys, you know, how you are. You don't have to show everything. When the time comes, you know, everything's gonna have to be taken out. I'm gonna get to that level where everything's coming, but when I can make it look pretty with the basics and beat these guys, just being myself, going out there fighting a smart fight and put them away like that, then that's what I'm gonna do. Um, Throwing those little evolution, little things, new wrinkles that you saw in the last fight, little by little, they'll start coming up as the competition steps up. And yeah, I'm excited to keep growing and keep fighting these tougher fights and showing what I can do
I'm
and showing
excited.
that I am one of the best around.
You are July 21st. You're going to put on a show. I'm looking forward to tuning into that. That will be broadcasted around the world on UFC Fight Pass if you're not in Texas. Landry, I want to give you an opportunity because you don't get an opportunity to really do this. So I'm going to kind of put you on the spot a little bit. I know how I would answer this if I were you, but I think it's more important that you answer it. And it's simply this, like, you're dynamic, you're a special fighter. Like, what type of guy is Mick Maynard getting? What type of guy is Dana White getting? What type of guy is Sean Shelby? What do you bring? What value add do you bring to the UFC? If they decide to call you up and say, you know what, like, we're not going to do Contender, we're not going to do Ultimate Fighter, like, we're just going to sign this guy straight. Like, what type of guy are they getting if they decide to bring you into the fold?
They're getting a blue collar hard worker who has that thing. You know, Dana said it on Contender when he brought in O'Malley. He's looking for a guy with that thing, and I believe I have that. I have the dynamic striking. I can be creative, but I can also keep it super simple and make the simple basics look pretty. And you know, they love strikers. They love flashy knockouts. They love people bleeding. I know if you go look at my fights, you see people cut up and bleeding, and you know, I'm entertaining. I get the fans involved, and I'll no matter who I'm fighting, I'll have the crowd on their feet chanting. You know, I'm bringing the eyes and I'm bringing fun fights.
Yes, sir, you certainly are. And before I let you go, we'd be remiss to not talk about it. Right, currently you're in Las Vegas, Nevada. We have a big UFC bout, and one of your teammates is going to be competing on the card. The legendary Robbie Lawler fighting Nico Price. I mean, talk about a matchup. That's a very fan-friendly matchup. And Robbie Lawler, you're talking about like one of the most like iconic fighters who's ever put on a pair of 4 ounce gloves, and he's your teammate. And is that kind of surreal sometimes? Like a guy that you watched fight like as a kid, helping him get ready for like a fight. Is that kind of like an out of body experience sometimes?
It's definitely surreal. It's definitely one of those experiences that you get to in your career where you have to take a step back and like think about where you've come from and where you're at. So for him to think enough of me to ask him to come out here and help him get ready for this fight was just a crazy experience. Makes me feel good about myself and makes me feel good knowing that I can help a legend, a guy of his caliber. And yeah, we finished sparring, and the next day you get a call. What are you doing July 8th? Like, you got any plans? Do you think you can come to Vegas? It's like, dude, even if I had plans, they're done. They're done. I'm coming to Vegas. So yeah, man. Before I even wanted to fight, Robbie's a guy who I knew about and I watched fight, and definitely one of my favorite fighters, a part of some of my favorite fights of all time, and definitely a surreal experience for him to ask me to come out here to help him.
When you look at the matchup between him and Nico Price, what are some things about that matchup that you feel Robbie has an advantage over? You look at the odds for this fight, and I know fighters don't really pay attention to odds, but us nerds do. And he's a sizable underdog, which shouldn't really surprise anybody. But if there's one thing about Robbie is like he still has a lot of things about him that make him very dangerous, and he could certainly end this fight against Nico Price, and that wouldn't surprise me. When you look at this matchup, like what are some of the advantages that you believe Robbie Lawler has over Nico Price?
I think one, obviously his experience, and two, his composure and his knowledge of the game. He's obviously a very long time veteran of the game, and he's smart, very calculated with how he fights. Um, as opposed to his younger days when he was the old school ruthless going there and brawling. He definitely still has that in him, but he's very smart. And Nico is a crazy, wild dude who contains a lot of power. But I think Robbie is just too smart, too experienced, and he's gonna know when to pick his shots, when to get out of a firefight, and make it a smart fight and be able to put Nico away.
Well, Landry, I really appreciate your time. One final question. A victory at LFA 163 for you in front of your friends, your family, people that just like watching you fight. I mean, you've kind of, you've been fighting on the East Coast for a couple of years, but to get that eighth career victory in Texas, can you just tell me like what would that moment like mean for you at this point in your career?
And it's huge. That means a homecoming, well capitalized on, and I'm a good win. I think it's gonna give me that call. I'm gonna go put this guy away, get on the mic, tell Dana, tell Sean, tell Mick, you know my number, you know my manager's number. Let's give me a call. If you need a short notice, 45, 55, I'm there. Let's run it. So
Well,
I'm gonna go take
Landry,
care of business here and go make a statement.
Landry, I appreciate your time. I want to give you the final word. If there's anyone out there that you would like to thank, if there's I see you got like the Lone Star Kid fleece going on. We got hats going on. What do you got going on, man? Why don't you tell the good people before I let you go?
Yeah, man. LoneStarKid.com. We got pullovers, the whole nine with the merch, hats. Yeah, thank you to everyone, friends, family, training partners, coaches. Everyone's helped me get to this point here. And hey, July 21st, Belton, Texas, LFA 163. The Lone Star Kid returns home, and he's gonna put on a hell of a show. Let's go.